Chapter 28. This is the first 72-hour hold that she's going to experience. So we're going from bad to worse. She said, one day in early January 2008, I had the boys. And at the end of the visit, a security guard who used to work for me and now worked for Kevin came to pick them up. First, he put Preston in the car. When he came to get Jaden, the thought hit me. I may never see my boys again. Given how things had been going with my custody case, I'd become terrified that I wouldn't get the kids back if I gave them back. I ran into the bathroom with Jaden and I locked the door. I just couldn't let him go. I didn't want anyone taking my baby. A friend was there and came to the bathroom door and told me that the security guard would wait. I held Jaden and I cried so hard. But no one was giving me extra time. Before I knew what was happening, a SWAT team in black suits burst through the bathroom door as if I'd hurt someone. The only thing I was guilty of was feeling desperate to keep my own children for a few more hours and to get some assurance that I wasn't going to lose them for good. I looked at my friend and just said, "But you said he would wait." Once they'd taken Jaden from me, they tied me onto a gurney and took me to the hospital. The hospital let me go before the end of a 72-hour hold, but the damage was already done, and it didn't help that the paparazzi were getting worse in their hounding of me. Okay, brief pause here. Britney, that's how you get it done. You want your kids back? Get them back, right? How is it that Kevin could come and take her kids with a SWAT team, and yet she was always left out at the doorstep begging to be let in by people she used to employ? How is that even possible? You know, I mean, it's like, okay, I know that at this point now they're actually having a custody battle over who gets to have the kids, right? And I guess her time was up, and so she had to give them back. But the SWAT team can be employed against you, but you never employed police help in order to get your kids back from Kevin? Explain to me how does Kevin have the ability, the knowledge, the foresight, and the will to get this done? And yet nobody was offering you these same suggestions. Nobody was like, hey, if you want your kids back from Kevin, there's no court appointed times when he can and cannot have them. You know, before there was court appointed times. Go get your kids. You know, he can't just take them. That isn't a possibility. You can't just take the children. Okay, so regardless, they're back in court again. A new custody hearing was held, and I was told that now, because I'd been so scared to lose the kids that I'd panicked, I would be allowed to see them even less. I felt like no one had my back. Even my family seemed not to care. Right around the holidays, I found out about my 16-year-old sister's pregnancy from an exclusive in the tabloids. The family had kept this from me. This was around the time that Lynn almost filed for emancipation from our parents. Among the things she had accused them of was taking away her cell phone. She wound up having to talk to the outside world through burner phones that she kept secret. I now see that if someone's not doing well, and I was really not doing well, that's the time you need to come to that person and hold them. Kevin, this would have been the time to ask her into the swimming pool. Kevin took my world away from me. He knocked the breath out of me, and my family did not hold me. I began to suspect that they were secretly celebrating that I was having the worst time in my life. But surely that couldn't be the case, right? Surely I was paranoid, right? Who even knows? I don't know why they would celebrate her demise like this, because she's the cash cow. Wouldn't they want to be able to, keep her working until the end of days? And can you even believe this? Okay, Lynn, who we all know has had her ways about her this whole time, is on the brink of looking for emancipation from her parents because she says that they are overly controlling, yet not so controlling that they could manage for her not to get pregnant at 16. I don't even know. Okay, it's hard to know how bad things were for Lynn. Obviously, she had the same parents Britney did, so right there we're going to go. Probably not a great existence. Lynn's parents are divorced at this point. Her dad does not live with them. He lives in the original house in Kentwood, and Lynn lives in the big mansion that Britney had built, and Lynn lives with her. So there's not the dynamics of the bad parents in the same house together with the mom screaming all night at the dad and stuff. But like Britney has previously stated in this book, Lynn was comatose half the time, trying to get over the divorce and self-medicating, and she was but a shadow of her former self. And her former self wasn't all that great, so you can imagine what she's bringing to the table now. But Lynn, to say that she needs to be emancipated, and her parents are being so mean because they're taking away her cell phone, is it really that bad, or is she just throwing a fit? It's hard to know with this one. And we don't get enough information about Jamie Lynn. But I can tell you that if she's running around getting pregnant, her parents probably didn't want her to have a cell phone. They probably were trying to control what was going on. And Jamie has been on that Nickelodeon show for a while. I mean, she's pretty emancipated here. She's making her own money, and she's got an actual, grown-up paycheck, and she's not going to school, so I don't know exactly what it is that she wants to do other than just maybe be dramatic. I don't know. It's hard to know what the kids were and were not getting from Mr. and Mrs. Spears. We know what Britney wasn't getting, but again, the dynamics have changed now that Jamie Lynn's here. So is Jamie Lynn really in trouble, or is she just kind of having a fit? Hard to say. All right, chapter 29. She says Los Angeles is warm and sunny all year round. But in January of 2008, winter actually felt like winter, even in California, because I felt alone and cold, and I was hospitalized. She said I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was hell on wheels. I was taking a lot of Adderall. I was horrible, and I will admit to doing wrong. I was so angry about what happened with Kevin. I tried so hard with him. I'd given him everything, and he turned on me. Okay, real quick. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, what does she mean by I was hell on wheels, I was horrible, I will admit to doing wrong? What does that mean? By whose estimation? Explain what you did that was wrong and bad. Not because those words are associated with you by everyone that you have ever known, loved, and cared about. They all label you with those terms. How is that your label? Or is that one that you've learned is your label? Because if I can't get an example of this bad behavior, I don't know how much you actually believe it was bad behavior. I can, like I said at the beginning, from our vantage point, it's not looking great for the decisions she's making. From our vantage point, I would say she probably was wilding out pretty extensively. However, I also don't understand if what we were seeing was an over-exaggeration by the media. That yes, crazy behavior. Was it legitimately crazy? Well, she says Kevin had just completely turned on her and she was looking for love in her life. Against all odds, and to sort of perpetuate the idea that she's not doing well mentally, she'd begun to date a photographer who wasn't just a photographer like, oh, he takes pictures for classy magazines. It's that he was a former paparazzo. But she was completely infatuated by him. And this joker got into her head simply because he acted chivalrous when the chaos was at its peak with all the other photographers, and he would help her out when the others got too aggressive. And for this, she was willing to date the enemy. I mean, she's now turning to her abusers for comfort? This is bad. This is really bad. This is the fight, flight, or fawn situation. She's fawning. She's trying to get close enough to the enemy that they can't hit her. And, I just feel so badly for her. How bad must it have been that you would turn to the enemy and say, oh, do you see me? You pick out the one guy that's not the worst, and then you try to make something with it. But she's not doing well at all anyway. I mean, that is just yet one more red flag in her existence. She says, back then, I would speak up if I didn't like something. I would certainly let you know. And I wouldn't think twice about it. If I'd been hit in the face in Vegas, as happened to me in July 2023, I'd have hit the person back 100%. I was fearless. She says that she was acting so recklessly at this time that she was playing around with her own life. She said when it came to being chased by the paparazzi, sometimes they were aggressive and sometimes they were playful. Many of the paps were trying to make me look bad and to get the money shot to show, oh, she's lost. She looks crazy right now. One day, the photographer that I was dating, we were being chased. And this was one of those moments with him that I'll never forget. She says we were driving fast near the edge of a cliff and I didn't know why, but I decided to pull a 360 right there on the edge. I honestly didn't even know I could do a 360. It was completely beyond me, so I think it was God. But I stuck it. The back wheels of the car stopped on what seemed like the very edge. If those wheels had rotated maybe 3 more times, we would have just gone over off the cliff. I looked at him, and he looked at me. We could have just died, I said. I felt so alive. So I think by anybody's estimation, we can go ahead and say she's not okay. That is not normal behavior, but she's also not in normal circumstances. And she's bereft of any kind of scaffolding in order to build a life that's not a mess. So can we fault her for being a puddle on the floor? No. To be screaming this loud for help and for nobody to help you would have only furthered the damage. You know, if anybody at any point, any member of her family had cared to step in, I think, and like step in, not like to tell her that she is a shame on the family name, that she's ugly and hateful and the worst. But if anybody had cared to step in and just put their arms around her and say, how can I help? She would have done anything they told her to do. She's not just being rebellious to be rebellious. She's being rebellious because she's screaming for somebody to help her. And I don't know why it was such a difficult task to step into the picture and be like, Britney, can I give you a hug? Can we get what can I do? Let's you and me go away together. Let's figure out a plan for how life can go, how we can get life back on the rails. Why would that have been so hard? Why was everybody just standing around, wringing their hands and jumping forward to criticize her and then, jumping back to wring their hands some more and then jumping forward to criticize her? Was it this hard to just figure out, because it would have just taken a couple of simple tweaks to just get her marginally better, but enough better that she didn't have to continue to embarrass herself all the time. Continuing, she says, I didn't know then that the photographer was married. I had no clue that I was essentially his mistress. I only found that out after we'd broken up. I just thought he was a lot of fun, and our time together was incredibly hot. He was 10 years older than me. Well, you didn't know he was married because you don't ask questions. For her, it would be better to be ignorant than to be informed. And we've seen this play out in many aspects of her life. The I didn't know is kind of her way to get through life. That goes for her career. That goes for her relationships. That's the way she handles any kind of responsibility. I just didn't know. So I don't know how you didn't know that Kevin didn't have 2 kids, and when you found out you didn't leave him. I don't know how you didn't know this guy was married. But you didn't know because you didn't want to know. I think this stuff comes out pretty easily and pretty quickly if you want to find out. I'm not blaming her for not wanting to find out. If she thought that this guy was the answer to feeling less unsafe, then I can imagine I probably too would have shut my eyes and plugged my ears and ignored all the signs and all the red flags. She continues by saying, everywhere I went, and for a while I went out a lot, the paparazzi were there. And yet, for all the reports about my being out of control, I don't know that I was ever out of control in a way that warranted what came next. The truth is that I was sad, beyond sad. I'm missing my kids when they were with Kevin. The photographer helped me with my depression. I longed for attention, and he gave me the attention that I needed. It was just a lustful relationship. My family didn't like him, but there was a lot about them I didn't like either. The photographer encouraged me to rebel. He let me sow my oats, and he still loved me for it. He loved me unconditionally. It wasn't like my mom screaming at me for partying. He said, girl, go. You got it. Do your thing. He wasn't like my father who set impossible conditions for his love. I got 2 things to say. The first one is, she says, I longed for attention and he gave me the attention that I needed. Very few of Britney's relationships at all, with the exclusion of maybe Justin, has there been any substance to it beyond the fact that they made her feel seen and wanted. But there doesn't seem to be much of a foundation beyond a lustful connection or even just an intimacy connection, as far as they want me and I like the feeling of being wanted. And so we'll figure out everything else, let's eat some good food and have a few laughs and, call it a day. So I don't think she approaches relationships with the understanding of what could make those lasting relationships. I mean, after a while, you can only eat so much food and have so many laughs and then, and have so much sex. And then it's like, okay, now what, But the other thing I want to say about this passage is she says that she got in that relationship with him because he wasn't her mother screaming at her, and he wasn't her father who put up completely ridiculous conditions in order for her to gain his love. And I think the thing that sort of hit me was, imagine what loving people correctly could do for them. And imagine what loving people correctly could keep them from. If Britney's parents had chosen to love her unconditionally and had chosen to help her instead of mock her and shame her and act embarrassed by her. Imagine all of the things they could have saved her from simply by being kind, simply by choosing to not be condemning in her behavior. And hear me when I say this. I am not saying we don't hold people to account. That's part of love, is to say, hey, we don't want to do that, but let me help you figure out something else to do. Part of loving well comes from allowing people to know that I see those mistakes. I don't love you less because of them. They were unwilling to do those things. But when people know all your dirt, but they still love you anyway, that's when you feel you're most loved. It's not when that person pretends like they don't see it, because then you always wonder, well, would they love me if they knew? It's when they know what you're up to, they love you anyway because of it. And then they help you out of it. That's what love is. And Britney just desperately wanted that. And all the things her parents hated that she was doing, they could have fixed by simply loving her. Okay, to go back to the photographer. He's over there championing anything she wants to do. He's not interested in putting any holds on her behavior. I mean, he's wilding out himself. He's having an affair with her. So, what's he going to do? Suddenly be the moral arbiter here? So he's 100% okay with anything she does. And she says that it felt radical to be that wild. That far from what anybody wanted me to be, she was into it. She said, I talked as if I were out of my mind. I was so loud everywhere I went, even at restaurants. People would go out to eat with me, and I would straight lay down on the table. It was a way of saying F you to any person who came my way. I mean, I'll say it. I was bad. Or maybe I wasn't bad so much as very, very angry. I wanted to escape. I didn't have my kids, and I needed to get away from the media and the paparazzi. I wanted to leave LA, so the photographer and I went on a trip to Mexico. And she says that for a short time, she felt far away from everything, and it worked. She said she felt better for a little while. And she feels that she should have taken more advantage of that and just gotten away from the frenzy of everything so she could just kind of clear her head. Well, maybe she should have taken advantage of getting her head cleared a little bit more, because the end of all that freedom is coming to a quick close. Now, she goes on to say that it seemed like my relationship with the photographer was getting more serious. And as that happened, I sensed that my family was trying to get closer to me in a way that made me uneasy. Well, recall, this is the same kind of behavior that we saw exhibited when she got married in Las Vegas, a panic. My mom called me one day and said, Britney, we feel like something's going on. We hear that the cops are after you. Let's go to the beach house. The cops are after me? I said, for what? I hadn't done anything illegal. That I knew for sure. I'd had my moments. I'd had my wild spell. I had been high on Adderall and I'd acted crazy, but I didn't do anything criminal. In fact, as she knew, I'd been with my girlfriends the prior 2 days. My mom and I had had a sleepover with my cousin Allie and 2 other girlfriends. Just come to the house, she said. We want to talk to you. So I went to the house with them. The photographer met me there. My mother was acting suspicious. When the photographer got there, he said, something's up, right? Yeah, I said, something's really off. All of a sudden, there were helicopters going around the house. Is that for me? I asked my mom. Is this a joke? It wasn't a joke. Suddenly, there was a SWAT team of what looked like 20 cops in my house. What the F did I do? I kept screaming. I didn't do anything. I know I'd been acting wild, but there was nothing I'd done that justified their treating me like I was a bank robber. Nothing that justified upending my entire life. So this is literally the second time the family has called in a SWAT team to get Britney. She's all of 5'4". You know, why can't anybody sit down and have a decent conversation with this person? Why must we get in, 20 members of the SWAT team? I don't understand the way this family functions. Why does it all go to be so dramatic? Sit the girl down and have a conversation. And maybe if you'd put some more deposits in this bank, she wouldn't be kicking and screaming every time you guys come around. Maybe she would listen to you. Probably at this point, she's not willing to sit down and have a conversation, because what have you ever done that showed her that would be fruitful for her to sit down and have a conversation? So maybe at this point, you actually do have to call in the SWAT team if you want anything done. Okay, so Britney says that she feels like nothing that she did justified this kind of behavior from her parents. And, it's hard to know what you would do in that situation. If you were Lynn and Jamie Spears, who are terrible at communication and seem to have nary an ounce of compassion in your body, but you looked at what was going on with Britney and you saw the degradation of her whole being, out on display everywhere. She's going out partying. She's dating the enemy. She's not able to get custody of her kids. And if you are in the mood to believe everything that all the rumors swirling around, you might think maybe she doesn't deserve to have the kids. You do see that she's high as a kite on Adderall 24/7. It might lead you to believe she's not well. And if Britney is actually acting crazy, as she said she was, then I can understand why they were like, we've got to get her under control. I think even parents who, I'm not even, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt in whatever way I can. In just saying, if you were her parents, would you have felt good about what was going on in her life? Would you have felt like this was a positive environment for her to be in? I later came to believe that something had changed that month since the last time I was brought to the hospital for evaluation. My father had struck up a very close relationship with Lou Taylor, who he worshipped. She was front and center during the implementation of the conservatorship that would later allow them to control and take over my career. Lou, who had just started a new company called TriStar Sports and Entertainment Group, was directly involved in calling the shots right before the conservatorship. At the time, she had few real clients. She basically used my name and hard work to build her company. Britney says that conservatorships are called guardianships sometimes, and they're usually reserved for people who have no mental capacity and people who can't do anything for themselves. But I was highly functional. I'd just done the best album of my career, and I was making a lot of people a lot of money, especially my father, who I found out took a bigger salary than he paid me. He paid himself more than $6 million while paying others close to him tens of millions more. The thing is, you can have a conservatorship that lasts for 2 months and then the person gets on track and you let them control their life again. But that wasn't what my father wanted. He wanted far more. She says that there's 2 kinds of conservatorships. There's the conservatorship of the person and the conservatorship of the estate. The conservatorship of the person is designated control details of the conservatee's life, like where they live, what they can eat, where they can drive in a car, what they do day to day. Even though I begged the court to appoint literally anyone else, and I mean anyone off the street would have been better, my father was given the job. The same man who'd made me cry if I had to get in the car with him when I was a little girl because he talked to himself. And the court was told that I was demented, and I wasn't even allowed to pick my own lawyer. That's an insane abuse of power. No one's going to give Britney a pass for her behavior during those days. Even she doesn't give herself a pass for this behavior. But why in the world is Jamie Spears the one that's being given control over this? With just a little bit of digging, people could have found out he wasn't the one. He was not the one to be in charge here. The conservator of the estate, an estate worth, in my case, tens of millions of dollars at one point, manages the conservatee's affairs to keep them from being subject to undue influence or fraud. She said that her lawyer was named Andrew Wallet, and he would eventually be paid $426,000 a year for keeping me from my own money. I would be forced to pay upward of $500,000 a year to my court-appointed lawyer, who I wasn't allowed to replace. At least that's what she'd been told. She's later going to find out she could have, but she didn't know that at the time. She said that what she couldn't get over was the fact that she's just this 5'4" pop singer, and she called everybody sir and ma'am. Why did they treat her like a criminal? There were times when I needed my father over the years, and I reached out and he wasn't there. But when it was time for him to be the conservator, of course he was on the case. He's always been all about the money. And she says she can't say that her mom was much better. Of course, we wouldn't expect anything from Lynn. I mean, this whole time, we've expected nothing from Jamie. He's just been a deadbeat this whole time. Lynn, we had some hopes for, I think, a little bit. Like, she is the mom, come on. And that's why I'm so overly offended by everything she does. Because as the mother, come on. Like, the dad, I don't know. There's a lot of dads out there not doing their best. I'm not saying the dads don't love the kids. Of course they do. But I think that as mothers, so many times we're willing to just hang in there when it gets tough in a way that sometimes fathers aren't. So Lynn, what the hell? She says she'd acted innocent. Well, she was there for 2 sleepover nights with my girlfriends and me. She'd known the whole time that they were going to take me away. I am convinced that it was all planned and that my dad and my mom and Lou Taylor were all involved. TriStar was even planning to be my co-conservator. Later, I learned that at the time, they put me into the conservatorship on the heels of his bankruptcy. My dad had been financially indebted to Lou, owing her at least $40,000, which is a lot of money for him, especially back then. And that is what my new lawyer, Matthew Rosengart, later called a conflict of interest in court. Soon after I was brought to the hospital against my will, I was informed that the conservatorship papers had been filed.